So what's the alternative, Arther? Leave? Disappear? Fake my own death and start over again?
No. You'll still be you.
I have a family too, Arther. I'm good. For them.
Hey, what's up? I'm Regina from Regina for Reals, and today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite TV shows, Dexter, and basically to talk about how I would have ended the show since we are coming upon the 9th season of Dexter, which will be coming in the fall, and finally decided, well, I better make a video now before the new season starts. So a lot of people weren't happy with the last season of Dexter, and I think overall it really had to do with people being very invested in the characters and not really having a satisfying ending. And we saw this with Game of Thrones, where there were a lot of setups and there weren't a lot of payoffs. And I don't think the last season of Dexter was that bad in that respect compared to that series. But when you really invest many, many hours in watching a TV show and you love the characters, you really want to have an ending like something like 6 Feet Under, which that series finale was like amazing. It was really good. And you're hoping for something like that. Now, obviously, as the last season of Dexter was unfolding, it probably wasn't going to be that good, but, you know, we just expected more. Now they are rebooting the series just to, not a reboot, I guess the right word would be, they're going to revisit Dexter and go into the future, kind of like where Dexter is now, with a 9th season. And I've basically, you know, to kind of ameliorate the discomfort of having such a bad ending, I kind of came up with my own ending to Dexter, which I can't help but share with people who I meet who also like Dexter. And now that they're going to be doing a new season to sort of like hopefully give fans a more satisfying ending, I thought, what a better time to actually share like what I thought should have been the ending. So, thinking about Dexter's legacy and the legacy of Harry, how should Dexter have wrapped up? So my premise is Harrison, Dexter's 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, I can't tell kids' ages very well. He should have been the new Dexter. What happens if instead of Dexter killing the brain surgeon in season 8, what if it's Harrison? What if it's Harrison that kills him? And you're like, how can a 6, 7, 8, I don't know how old this kid is, 8-year-old kill the brain surgeon, this serial killer? Well, I'm going to set it up for you. So as I was thinking about Dexter and how he ends up being a lumberjack, I was just feeling how unsatisfying that ending was, and sort of thinking through like what could have happened. And I think one of the things that the writers didn't really take advantage of, there's this idea that Dexter was born in blood, right? He saw his mother murdered in front of him with his brother in this sort of storage container, and he's born in blood, and that trauma triggers the emotional crack that ends up making Dexter into who he is, which is a serial killer, right? So he's born in blood, and we hear that theme repeated when we go forward to season 4, when Rita is murdered by Arthur Miller, right? So Dexter starts to hear a baby cry, and he's like calling Rita's phone because she's not answering. He starts to hear Harrison cry, and he goes into the bathroom, and he sees Harrison on the floor sitting in a pool of blood, and he sees Rita, and Rita's been murdered by the serial killer that Dexter had been hunting.
Born in blood. Both of us.
And so Dexter says it himself. He says Harrison is, just like him. He couldn't do that for his son, like have him escape the fate of his own fate, right? This sort of passing down of generational trauma. He ends up, by being the good guy and hunting the serial killer, his wife is murdered. His son loses his mother, and he's too also now born in blood. And we kind of forget about that, right? And I think there's some other clues that you could start to think like, there's more to this little kid than meets the eye. If we fast forward to season 8, we see Harrison, he's like 6 or 7, something like that. Forgive me, I don't know kids' ages, but he's around that age. And he's kind of getting a little sophisticated in the way that there's an episode where Harrison hides the remote under the bed and under his bed. And he lies about it. He lies about it to the babysitter. And towards the end of the episode, Dexter finds the remote, and Dexter says to him,
Before I read to you, I gotta talk to you about the TV remote. You said you didn't take it, but Jamie found it under your bed.
I didn't mean to break it. I was pretending it was a thunder blaster and I dropped it in the kitchen.
Well, yeah, that's okay. Accidents happen, but you lied to me. That's a big deal. We should never lie.
But Daddy, you lie.
What do you mean?
You told me Doggy got lost. I saw you throw him in the trash. I had to rescue him.
You're right, I lied. Doggy got dirty and I tried to clean him up, and when I couldn't, I threw him away. I'm sorry I lied to you, Harrison.
That's okay. But can I keep him? I really love him.
He's soaked in blood that links me to a murder. Yeah, but maybe he should live under the bed.
Okay.
Okay. We monkeys.
Dexter's doing all these things. Like Dexter's murdering people, he's lying to people to cover up his, his 2 different personas. You have your dark passenger, and then you have, happy-go-lucky Dexter. But, Dexter's doing these things, but he's doing them in front of Harrison, thinking, well, it's just a kid, right? He can't possibly be picking up on all this stuff that I'm doing. But kids actually do pick up quite a lot. And so in that moment, Harrison says, but Daddy, you lie, right? So already we know that Harrison has kind of been picking up on things that his dad does that adults aren't being able to see. But this kid, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is learning these things about his dad. That his dad lies, and that if he wanted to get out and get in trouble for breaking the remote, that he could just hide under the bed. And the reason that Harrison knows that Dexter lied was because he said that his stuffed animal was lost or something like that, but he throws it away because, of course, there's blood on it, and it connects him to a crime scene. Now, Dexter, Harrison may not connect the stuff that's on the stuffed animal to being blood, but years later he's gonna be like, ugh, what the hell was on that stuffed animal? But I digress. So how does Harrison become the killer of the brain surgeon? Hopefully I can get this out of my brain so it makes coherent sense. But here it goes. Okay, so if we're going back to season 8, which is like a lot of information to keep in my head. We have Dexter. He's hunting the brain surgeon. He's hunting the brain surgeon for Evelyn Vogel. And, there's a lot of red herrings. He's kind of going after different people he thinks might be the brain surgeon. And the pressure in the show really is Dexter decides he wants to be with Hannah, right? And the pressure is, right, there's the police are after her, Deb's old boss is after her, and so Dexter decides to make the plunge. He's going to go with Hannah to Argentina, I think. But things kind of get mucked up when Dexter does catch the brain surgeon, and he has the opportunity to kill him. But the other conflict in the story is that this idea that Dexter, who's a sociopath, is suddenly being able to feel his feelings, which, quite frankly, wouldn't happen. I'm no expert, but, it's so unlikely for something like that to happen. So because he's like wanting to turn over this new leaf of being this family man who's going to run off with Hannah and Harrison to Argentina, he decides not to kill the brain surgeon. And he leaves, he calls it in, he leaves the guy there. And of course, Deb goes there to put him into custody. And of course, this other guy who is also looking for Hannah and Dexter, he shows up. He actually sets the brain surgeon free, allowing him to injure Deb, which ultimately leads to her death. That was a lot to get out. So that act of him not being who he is as a character, not doing what he does, leads to the downfall, right? Leads him not to have the happy outcome that we want for him. Him trying to be the good guy stops him from having the good guy ending, the happy ever ending. If Dexter just did what Dexter does best, he could have been in Argentina. He could have had the happy ending with his gal pal sociopath Hannah and Harrison. But that's not how it went down, right? So, of course, Dexter is about to leave. There's, you're at the airport, and there's he has to create a distraction so that him and Hannah and Harrison are able to get on the plane. But of course, he gets a call. Deb's in the hospital. She's in really bad shape. Dexter goes back to see what happened. And then that's when the story really takes a turn. And Dexter feels like there's this decision that's made that, Dexter, he's just not good for anybody, right? Because everybody's kind of dying around him. And that he really should have just, do what he does best. And he can't really have any attachments to do that. That's the sort of the decision making. At least that's how I, remember it. Dexter takes Deb on a boat, gets lost at sea, and they're both presumed as dead. And then I think Hannah sees some news or something, and so she knows that he's out of the picture, and sort of Harrison is none the wiser. But the story, the setup between, our Joey, is Joey and Deb going to get back together? We don't really get any resolution with that. You have Masuka and his new daughter. That doesn't really go anywhere. Of course, Evelyn is murdered by the brain surgeon. The brain surgeon's dead. And I think Batista is the new sergeant, captain, whatever you call him. But, nothing really happens to, really bring resolution to all the characters. And, Dexter, we just kind of fast forward to Dexter as a lumberjack. And it's really disappointing. People are pissed off because, we want to see those loose ends tied up. We want to see the resolution for all those characters and know that, even if it's not a happy ending, it's an ending that makes sense for the story and the characters. And that ending didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that he would sort of ostracize himself, especially if he was having these emotions where he was like, oh, I could really have the life I wanted. And I think is this what love feels like? It just didn't really, to me, make sense. So going back to my idea, what if Harrison ends up being the person who kills the brain surgeon? So how would that happen? Well, instead of Dexter getting a phone call letting him know that Deb is in the hospital, he doesn't get that phone call, right? He gets on the plane, he goes to Argentina, right? Deb is hurt, but it's not life-threatening hurt. And, her being in the hospital brings her and Joey together. The brain surgeon vanishes. I think there's like a hurricane or something that's happening, and that's the whole Lost at Sea thing. But the brain surgeon vanishes. He's sort of MIA. Dexter is, living happily in Argentina with Hannah and Harrison, and Deb is on the mend. Of course, Dexter, hears that he got that she got hurt, and that the brain surgeon is at large, which is weighing on his mind. But, it's not his problem anymore. He's trying to live the happy life, the happy normal life that he's been pretending at for so long. But now he finally has a taste of it, right? And the authorities back in Florida, Batista, all those guys, they're really looking hard for the brain surgeon. But, the dude just did a David Copperfield. He's gone. Poof. And so that's the tension in the story, is when is the shoe going to drop? So we go to Argentina with Dexter and Hannah and Harrison. And Hannah's at home. I mean, I've worked this out in different ways in my head. Hannah's at home and the brain surgeon shows up. Now, Harrison is there. He sees that the brain surgeon has threatened Hannah, but he's still kind of hiding. Or Dexter comes home with Harrison, and we see that the brain surgeon is there with Hannah. So what happens? When the brain surgeon infiltrates their house and threatens Hannah, of course, Dexter is in this crazy, flipped up, bizarro situation where he's like the normal guy. And the brain surgeon is kind of like Dexter, right? And he's holding, he has Hannah in his hands, and he can just totally obliterate Dexter's happy little life. He gave him a get out of jail, he gave him a truce, an option for a truce, and Dexter didn't take it. Dexter did not take that truce. And the brain surgeon was like, you should have took the truce when I asked you to, because now it's personal. Harrison's there watching, and the brain surgeon, kills Hannah. I mean, I don't know how he does it, but the brain surgeon kills Hannah. Now, she's not totally dead, but, as this happens, of course, Dexter goes after the brain surgeon, and Harrison is watching all of this. And you have to remember that Harrison is so attached to Hannah. There's an episode, and I will show the clip, where Deb walks in to Dexter's apartment, and she's like, "Hi, Harrison," and Harrison's like, and he doesn't give her any time of day. But then they start talking about Hannah, Dexter and Deb, and Harrison's like, Hannah? Where's Hannah? And then later there's a conversation with Dexter and Harrison tells Dexter, I would really like Hannah to be my mom.
Hey. Hello? Harrison, hello? That's it? I remember when I used to get a hug.
Yeah, even up. No, she's fine. Hannah's just popular. You miss her?
Yeah, I liked playing with her. She was nice. I wish she could be my mom.
Right. And what's your name?
Harrison?
Harrison. Ah, is this your family?
Mm-hmm.
That's your daddy? That's you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who's the pretty lady?
That's my mom.
Your mom.
Hey, why don't you go grab your towel, bud? Swim time.
And, and I'm sure there's if Dexter were able to feel emotions, he feels some guilt, maybe not even guilt, but responsibility that the reason Rita is gone is because of him and who he is, right? So right away, we know that Harrison has this attachment to Hannah, would like her to be his mom. And he's had a couple months maybe of just, I don't know the time frame between, Dexter leaving and them being in Argentina, but maybe they've had a couple months to be a happy little family where Harrison's had a chance to experience what it's like to have a mommy and a daddy. And then this weirdo brain surgeon guy pops into his life and threatens Hannah. And as soon as he sees Dexter, he's like, you should have taken the deal that I gave you. And he kills her, right? Or, slices her throat. And as she's dying, Dexter goes after him. And he's like, Harrison, get away. And, the brain surgeon and Dexter, I mean, they are kind of like, they're really equals, right? In terms of, like, Dexter was a little bit smarter. He still got the brain surgeon. But when you have things to lose, that can cloud your judgment. And so the brain surgeon and Dexter are really on equal footing. They're fighting each other. They're on the ground. And it looks like the brain surgeon is going to kill Dexter. Like, he's got him. He's got the knife. He's, they're fighting. The knife falls. And it looks like that the brain surgeon's just going to choke the heck out of Dexter. And Dexter is going to be dead, right? No more Dexter. But as this happens, you just hear a thud or some sort of noise that lets you know, uh-oh. And there's a look of shock on the brain surgeon's face. And he kind of goes limp. And he falls off of Dexter, right? Because he's on top of Dexter and he's choking him out or putting his, elbow into it. And he falls out. He falls over. And we cut and we see the knife in his back. And we see the face of Harrison, shocked, but also not crying and not scared, right? This guy, this brain surgeon, just killed his surrogate mother, and he's trying to kill his dad. And even though he's 6 or 7 years old, he doesn't want to lose the only dad he's ever known. And so he stabs this guy. And Dexter's like, Harrison. And Harrison looks at Hannah and he's like, Hannah, mommy. And he runs to her and she has maybe a few more breaths and she just lets him know, mommy will always love you, Harrison. Something like that. Something that's really oh my God. And he cries. And that's when we hear the tears and we start to hear Dexter's tears, right? When he was in that storage container crying for his mother. And they both lose their mothers. With all these things that have happened, Dexter becomes Harry, right? Because now Dexter, his son, was born in blood, and now he's actually killed a person. And we don't know yet if Harrison's going to be a full-blown serial killer, but at the bare minimum, he has had a tremendous amount of trauma, and he's killed somebody to protect his family, right? And now Dexter's like, oh crap, what do I do? So Dexter ends up becoming Harry, and Harrison becomes Dexter, and we sort of passing on this legacy of what do you do with this familiar trauma and use it for a greater good. So we've come around full circle, right? Where you have Dexter, and then you have Harrison, and now Harrison is Dexter. And so we're back in Miami. Deb and Joey are together. We have Dexter and Harrison together, and we've, the legacy of Harry moving on. But then it gets, so is that enough? Is that enough for us? Is that enough? Is that too dark of an ending? But what if we decided, if Harrison's 7 years old? But what if we fast forward 13 years and suddenly we have Harrison in his early 20s and maybe he's going to school to be a cop or a forensic tech, and we get to see a glimpse of Dexter showing are teaching him the code, Harry's code, and the legacy of that. So we do want to see Dexter happy, but at the same time, it just didn't feel right, right? Like, so now that they don't have to be in Argentina, Dexter goes back to Florida, back to Miami, where he continues to be a blood splatter technician, and of course takes Harrison under his wing because, you know, it's too early to tell, but when we fast forward, say 10 to 15 years, we're able to learn that Harrison, in fact, was born in blood and has the same dark passenger that Dexter has, and of course, Dexter is able to pass on the code of Harrison. He's able to pass that code to Harrison and basically kind of continue the family tradition that was really created by this family trauma. And the show could just end, right? I mean, we could tie up some loose endings. We see, you know, if it's 10 or 15 years later, we could see Joey and Deb together. Maybe they have some kids. We see Bautista and his niece, and she's married. Maybe she's married to Masuka. Who knows? But, you know, I think you'd be able to tie all those loose ends, especially if you go forward in time and are able to kind of like show how things have evolved. And so I think that would have been like the ending that many fans would have liked to see. They want to see Dexter continuing to do his thing. And I think they would like to see Dexter in that sort of family role of teaching his son the family business or legacy, as it were, even though it would be, you know, the whole concept of Harrison murdering the brain surgeon is really disturbing, but it does sort of, it helps to push the story forward into the future, right? And to a spinoff, you know, possibly if that's important to you. But we'd be able to tie all the loose ends with Joey and Deb, with Bautista, with Masuka, and we really see a sort of completion that I think would be really satisfying to the people who are really big fans of the show. And it would be really interesting to see Harrison in 10 or 15 years, to see sort of all the things that he's been through, how that shaped him to be a young adult, right? Because Harrison was born in blood. Later, he's witnessing all these things as a little kid that his dad doesn't think he's noticing, but he knows that his dad lies. He sees things that tell him his dad really isn't who he is to everybody else, but Harrison sees Dexter. And I think in that relationship, just even Dexter having someone who sees him for who he is just going to be so fulfilling for Dexter, but it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. And I think if that was explored in maybe, you know, the final episode, that Dexter finally has the companionship that he wants and needs and yearns for, but he also at the same time has the camouflage and the prop of this family, this being this family man, and that things could just kind of keep going forward, you know, unless, you know, Dexter or Harrison get sloppy and leave some evidence behind. And you know, there's some funny things that you could explore there, because with Harrison being sharing DNA with the ice truck killer and with the Bay Harbor butcher, you know, there's some DNA evidence that comes to light, then poof, you got a whole nother few seasons that you could have fun with that. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly did. This is an idea that's been like percolating in my brain for many years, and anytime I would talk about Dexter with my friends, I would just, like, somebody would tell me they like Dexter, I'd be like, oh my God, let me tell you how it should have ended. And they were like, you should make a video about that. And then I would want to, but it was just so hard to get it all out of my brain. But finally, as I was just about to decide to make this video, there was the announcement for the next brand new season of Dexter with the original writer-director. And so I thought, well, I better do it now before we get our real ending to Dexter. All right. Well, thank you so much and take care. Bye-bye.